أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الحمد لله غير مقنوط من رحمتي ولا مخلو من نعمتي ولا معيوس من مغفرتي ولا مستنكف عن عبادتي الذي لا تبرخ منه رحمة ولا تفقد له نعمة وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Salawat, please. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. صلوات. اللهم صل على Imam Ali has said in Nahju Balagha, Sermon 45, praise belongs to Allah, for no one despairs in His mercy. No one loses hope in His blessing. No one is hopeless from His forgiveness. And nobody is too proud to worship Him. Mercy doesn't cease from Him, and blessings are not deprived from Him. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters. It wouldn't be a majlis if a mic didn't go wrong, so it's normal. Even the biggest center, small, doesn't really matter. And inshallah, we're all young at heart, so we all consider ourselves children, hopefully. Yeah? No? Okay, that's just me when I'm playing with my children then. Salawat, please. Back there. Yeah, okay. So today's lecture, inshallah, will continue on from yesterday's, where we looked at the role of tafakkur, contemplation and pondering before our rituals, before our spirituality. But I want to, inshallah, investigate this a bit deeper. Because if our dear prophets and imams deeply reflected about their actions and their rituals and existence, clearly it made them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Karbala is a very good example. Take Qasim alayhi salam. As you all know, when his uncle Imam Hussein alayhi salam asked him, how do you find death? He said that I find death to be sweeter than honey. Which is from a 13-year-old or a teenager to express such a statement means that in his relatively short life, clearly he was reflecting a great deal about his existence, and he was nurtured in a particular way to think about life and death, that for him doing the right thing, even if it meant death, was a very noble activity. Take Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imagine that at every step of the way, he is losing his family members and close companions. He is losing his nephew Qasim, Own and Muhammad, his son Ali al-Akbar, his other son Ali al-Asghar, and yet he has the resolve and the determination not to give in to the allegiance of Yazid ibn Muawiyah. But even deeper than that, not to give in by saying that I have my family and so I will simply continue on my life and live in a corrupt society. Because it's a very easy thing to say. He could say, well, I have my family, I've made a stand now, and that is enough. It's enough for me. I've lost a lot of people, now I will remain in Medina or Makkah. Now, let me just pose you a question. If Imam Hussein alayhi salam had done that, let's say that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was not martyred but injured. Okay, he was injured. He had lost a number of family members and companions. He was injured, but he remained alive and then he died. Today, we would still be giving some respect to him, wouldn't we? Like any other person in history, we would be giving respect to his contribution. We give respect to scholars, we give respect to revolutionaries. Some of them don't complete their revolution and live a normal life afterwards. But the difference is that Imam Hussein alayhi salam let go of even his personal attachments. We have, mashallah, children here, have husband, wives, brothers and sisters. How attached are we to our children? They cry and we become upset. Any small injury, even if it's just a cut, we will feel sad and then tell them, get over it. Okay? Normal parenting, be strong. Okay? So we are that attached to our family. And people were telling Imam Hussein alayhi salam, for the sake of your family, for the sake of your life, just give in, give the allegiance to Yazid ibn Muawiyah. In fact, the wives of the husbands of the Kufan people, family members, used to tell their husbands, don't go to Karbala. Don't, or just accept the allegiance of Yazid ibn Muawiyah. Obey Ibn Ziyad. Family members used to put pressure on the Kufan people not to stand for what is right and go against for that which is wrong. So in our life, what we perceive as good may not necessarily be good if truth and justice are being corrupted in society, and that includes all our personal, family and materialistic attachments. And so the question that I want to tackle today is, how were the prophets, imams, their family members nurtured to obtain this kind of reflection and make the right decisions in society? And we are essentially talking about Islamic education, known as ta'aleem, educational instruction, or tarbiyah, moral or spiritual upbringing. Now, the easiest answer to this question, when I was young, and maybe we are still told this, is, well, prophets and imams will always be noble, they'll always be spiritual, because Allah has given them grace. Allah has appointed them as prophet and imam. So at the end of the day, of course Imam Hussein alayhi salam is going to be courageous, and even though his family members are going to pass away, of course he's going to stand alone. Of course Qasim will give this beautiful response that death is sweeter than honey. They are the Ahlul Bayt, they are the prophetic children. But there are two problems with this argument, two very big problems. Number one, if you say that just because you are part of a prophet's family or part of Ahlul Bayt, that you will be noble, that you will attain reflection, then everything that is said in the Qur'an is wrong. Because in the Qur'an, the prophet's children were not necessarily righteous. And you all know examples, but I'll just mention a few. Prophet Nuh, arguably one of the greatest prophets, his son did not follow him into the ark. His son disobeyed him. His son did not necessarily believe in Allah. Now imagine the privilege of being born into a prophet's family. But that doesn't guarantee that you will be righteous. Prophet Yaqub had many children. But most of them were jealous of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, to the extent that they beat him up, took him away from Prophet Yaqub, put him into a well, which led him to being sold as a slave. And Prophet Yaqub and Prophet Yusuf were apart until old age. Is that the behavior of brothers? Is that the behavior of a prophet's children? So, just because a person is a prophet or imam does not guarantee that their children will also be righteous. And we still use this argument today. Some people may be Sayyids. Okay, that is nice. You are tracing your lineage back to Prophet's family, no problem. But if people use that lineage and say, because I have a particular title, because I am the descendant of Imam Musa al-Kadhim, that makes me morally or spiritually superior than you, then that is wrong. That's got nothing to do with the Qur'an at all. Nothing. That is our own culture, that is our own arrogance, and using our position to claim some right in the society. Many verses of the Qur'an go against this kind of nisbah, of relation or lineage to some group or tribe. And maybe in a few lectures I'll tackle that verse, but for your information, it's a famous verse that you all know, Suratul Hujurat, that is surah number 49, verse 13, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that indeed He created people as male and female, as nations and tribes, in order that they recognize each other, لِتَعَارَفُوا, to recognize each other, in the hope that they become God conscious. Our religious group and our lineage, our cultural group does not matter. But I see this argument still being used today. They say, I am this, I am from this descendant, I am from this group. So by implication, what are they trying to say? Why the need to say it anyway? Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. Because even if the Prophet's children could not attain the status, then who are we? So that is one argument that people use to justify the natural entitlement of Prophet's children. And there's a second argument, which is a bit more philosophical and theological. People say, well, Allah appointed the Prophet. Well, Allah appointed the Imam, or the Prophet appointed the Imam. So because of this appointment, they receive this nobility. They receive this grace because Allah made the decision. There's another problem with this argument. Because if that's the case, why didn't He make me a prophet? Why didn't He make you a prophet or imam or a virtuous lady? Why did they receive this entitlement from before? What about the concept of free will? What about the concept of God's justice? God has to be just to everybody. So therefore, if everybody, should be a prophet or imam, and we're all claiming this, what is the point of free will? What is the point of struggling in our daily life and actions? Indeed, the prophets went through their struggle, went through juhud. Each of them strived and they attained this level of prophethood. Even if in God's will and knowledge that this person was going to become a prophet, that's not a contradiction. But you cannot take away the prophet's own struggle to attain these various degrees. So for example, you look at Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. Prophet Yusuf went through so many struggles that he was put in a well, that he had to withstand the advances and desires of Zuleika. Look at the struggle that he is getting. He has to withstand the lust and the desires of a beautiful woman, Zuleika. And not only that, he has to work as a slave. And even then he is accused of doing something wrong and put into prison twice over. What's the point of these struggles? Why do they have to go through these struggles? If they are just a prophet, why go through these struggles? These struggles are there to test the prophet's behavior and responses to events, so that when he is bestowed prophethood, when Allah commands him to express the godly message, his nafs is not impure. That is why, for example, the Prophet, peace be upon him, after 40 years expressed the message. And many other prophets, you can apply the same type of reasoning. So this argument that I was told, and maybe we still use, that well, there are prophets and imams and they're going to do this anyway, and let us just do salawat and tell nice stories. Well, my question is a very simple one, especially for the children here. How do we learn from them if we make them so angelic? The struggles are there to teach us about our own struggles, my desires and your desires, and how we overcome them. Salawat, please. The second introduction to this idea of Islamic education and overcoming these struggles is how the imams were nurtured. Now, I'm just telling you my experience. When I give a lecture, I don't have a particular filter, unfortunately. It's like I'm just talking to you normally. So I'm not like one of those lecturers that is very structured and point one, point two. I'm just speaking as I would speak to you when we have Dunkin' Donuts and whatever, okay? So, as I said, when I was growing up, I could not tell the difference between each imam. I don't know if you found this. So when I used to go for majlis, all the imams are the same to me. So, it was Imam Ali's wilad that I used to attend. It was Imam Hassan's wilad that I used to attend. All of them were pious. All of them were noble. All of them gave in charity. I heard the same story. So then I used to tell myself, well, okay, I accept everybody's pious, But I want to try to identify with a particular imam. I mean, I want a personality to inspire me, right? And then later on, this is like 10 years later, when you start to study and go through religious education, and you read our sources say something else. And I'm just going to share with you one example only, because it is to do with Imam Hassan alayhi salam and Imam Hussain alayhi salam. If you read Kitabul Irshad, volume 2, page 7, but you can take any other page if you want. Bibi Fatima salamullahi alayha, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, Allahumma salli, is reported to bring her two sons, Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein, to the Messenger of Allah at a time when he was suffering from sickness and he eventually died. So this is basically when the Prophet was on his deathbed, and Lady Fatima brings her two sons to the Prophet. So she says, Rasulullah, these are your two grandsons. Please give them something as a kind of inheritance or legacy. Leave them something that they can be inspired with, right? So the Prophet gives this response. He says, as for Al-Hassan, he has my form and my nobility. And form may mean appearance and character traits, and nobility of character, that this person is pious, this person behaves in a dignified manner. These are the traits of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And if you read his life, you will see that Imam Hassan was a very patient Imam, very patient, to do the pact with Muawiyah, even to give sermons in the public when people attacked him. This is all there in Kitabul Irshad. He was a very patient person. So this statement is true. But then Rasulullah says this, وَأَمَّا الْحُسَيْنِ فَإِنَّ لَهُ جُودِي وَشُجَاعَتِي, which is exactly what Imam Hussein eventually became. As for Hussein, he has my generosity and my bravery. Now there is a clear difference between the two brothers here. I have a brother and I have a sister. You have brothers, sisters. Look, brothers and sisters are different. We're all different. We're in the same household, but we are different, right? Everybody has a different trait, okay? My brother is a bit more jokey than me. My jokes are really bad, which I do in the majlis. He's a bit better. I don't know. Something went wrong, something went right. But I have something else, okay? I'm a bit more studious, and unfortunately I'm restricted to this path of knowledge. It's boring, right? So this is what happened, right? So at the end of the day, even in the Prophet's household, the two brothers are different, right? It is not to say that Imam Hassan was not brave. No, Imam Hassan was brave in his own way. But the defining quality of Imam Hussein was his bravery and his generosity. That is why he could stand alone in Karbala. That is why he could do it. He was destined for it. Imam Hassan was destined for something else. That is not to say one is better than the other, but each one fulfilled their destiny. And therefore, as a young parent, okay, I'm not trying to claim any expertise, mashallah, there are parents here who can give me advice, is that we want our children to fulfill their destinies based on their traits. We want to fulfill our destinies. But we have to recognize that there are differences between imams, differences in responses between us, which shape our moral and spiritual destiny. Salawat. So let me give you two kind of quotes to put this in perspective. How do we approach Islamic education? I'm going to give you a quote from a British philosopher, okay? Alfred North Whitehead, wonderful philosopher. I would say hardly read, and those in the audience who are also quite scholarly may agree with me, that he's hardly read, but he writes on philosophy, he writes on existence of God, he writes on education. And he says something in one of his lectures which is very beautiful. He says the following, this may appeal to parents and madrasa teachers and educators. He says, I appeal to you as practical teachers. With good discipline, it is always possible to pump into the minds of a class a certain quantity of inert knowledge. Inert knowledge is knowledge that you give to someone that is a one-way knowledge. where he's receiving it but does not act upon it. Inert means it just remains there, it remains still. And he gives an example. You take a textbook and make them learn it. So far, so good. The child then knows how to solve a quadratic equation. But what is the point of teaching a child to solve a quadratic equation? There is a traditional answer to this. It is this: the mind is an instrument, you first sharpen it and then use it. The acquisition of the power of solving this quadratic equation is the part of the process of sharpening the mind. This is the traditional model of education. You learn maths, you learn history, you learn English, and you learn it for up to 18 years, let's say, and it's all there to sharpen your mind. So when you go out in the real world, you can get a job, or you know how to behave, you know how to think. But he goes against this traditional mode of education. And he wrote this, by the way, if I am correct, in the mid-20th century. He was born 1929, right? So he's criticizing education in the 20th century, which has survived 100 years later, right? So he says, the mind is never passive. It is a perpetual activity, delicate, receptive, and responsive to stimuli. You cannot postpone its life until you have sharpened it, right? Whatever interest attaches to your subject matter must be evoked here and now. Whatever powers you are strengthening in the pupil must be exercised here and now. Whatever possibilities of mental life imparted to the child. That is the golden rule of education, and very difficult to follow. And he concludes, what education has to impart is an intimate sense for the power of ideas, for the beauty of ideas, and for the structure of ideas with a body of knowledge in reference to the life of the being possessing it. He's saying two very simple things. One, you cannot nurture a child to be a genius, to be creative, to be responsive by making his mind passive. So if you say that a child has to learn a textbook, that is only one form of education. It is important, but it is only one form of education. It's a very passive form of education. And he then says that whatever the child or the pupil is feeling now, if, for example, the child is thinking quickly, if the child is artistic, if the child thinks critically, or I spoke to one brother, young brother a few days ago, he was very philosophical. If the child is philosophical, then you have to empower that child to follow that philosophical scope of inquiry. That is the golden rule of education, right? Now, as a reference point only, or as a side note, the majalis is diametrically opposed to that system of education. Now, I try to make it interactive, all right? Okay, so please don't blame me completely. But majalis runs for 45 minutes to 1 hour. And you guys in the audience, I'm transmitting inert ideas to you because you can't act upon it, right? So it is a one-way sort of channel of education. If you look in Nahj Balagha and you examine the sermons of Imam Ali alayhi salam, there are some interesting things to note here. Imam Ali tackles a range of topics, not one topic. There is no, for example, he'll always tell a story. He'll talk about politics, he'll talk about interpretation of Qur'an. He'll talk about a variety of ideas, exactly what Alfred North Whitehead is talking about. Number two, his sermons were short, to the point and eloquent. Some were long, some were short. So he saw the audience and adapted. Number three, people could ask him questions. They could raise their hand and say, Ya Ali ibn Abi Talib, Ya Rasulullah, whatever, they could ask him questions, right? So Imam Ali's style of sermonizing was in a way different to the way the format of the majalis is today, right? Now this is Alfred North Whitehead writing in the 20th century. Let us see what Imam Ali has to say about developing children, developing his own children, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain al-Islam and Muhammad ibn Hanafiya. I'll just read you two quotes from letter 31 of Nahj Balagha, which is about developing his children. Okay? He says the following. He says, وَعَوِّدْ نَفْسَكَ تَصَبَّرَ عَلَى الْمَكْرُوهِ. Habituate yourself to develop patience over adversities. He tells Imam Hassan, for example. This is just before his death. make yourself or develop yourself to have patience over adversities. The best disposition is to develop patience in righteousness. In all your affairs, take refuge yourself in your God, because indeed you will be taking refuge in a guarded shelter and mighty protector. So he's teaching his son how to have patience in adversity, a skill. He's teaching the concept of patience, when to use it, and then to call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a situation of difficulty. This is when he's a bit younger. So this is how they are taught. Another example. Ya bunayya, ij'al nafsaka mizanan fima baynaka wa bayna ghayrik fa'ahbib li ghayrik ma tuhibbu li nafsika. The golden rule. O son, make yourself as a scale in that which is between you and others. Love for others what you love for yourself. Now, this is again to criticize that original argument I began with. It is not just that the Prophet is the Prophet and Imam is a Prophet. They were nurtured with certain principles in their household. So they are taught from a young age, in a situation of difficulty, this is what you apply and how you apply it. When somebody comes and curses you, this is how you behave. And let me just tell you stories to link this up, to show you the proof. You all know this story. When Lady Fatima, peace be upon her, was praying on Thursday nights or on Fridays, going into sajda or doing dua. This is when Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain were young and running about as children. They used to hear their mother pray. And you all know this story, but I want to take it from a different perspective. They used to ask their mother, why have you not prayed for us? Yes? Would you all agree? Right? Why have you not prayed for us? Now, again, just look at this. We always say that Imams know everything. Well, if they knew everything, why are they asking this question? Why are they asking this question? In the Qur'an, the Prophet says, I only have a little of ilmul ghaib, a small portion. And Imams are not prophets. So they would be even lesser in terms of ilmul ghaib. Okay? So they did not know this. And what is the beautiful response the mother gives? Which is that if you want your dua to be accepted, then first pray for others before you pray for yourself. So there are two things here. Number one, worship was very, very open. Right? Now, I'll give a very simple example. When we pray in our household, and by the way, this question could go horribly wrong, but I'm going to just take a risk. Right? How many of us pray Jamaat namaz in our household regularly? Anybody want to raise their hands? If you have families. One, mashallah? No. Yes, mashallah. Oh, mashallah. Okay, one. Okay? So, is it a habit for us to bring our families together to pray together? Even if it is reciting dua, expressing, even going into sajda and doing it loudly and teaching our child what it means, or saying, well, now pray for what you wish. So it's just a simple example I'm giving you, which is that Lady Fatima made the expression of worship something very open in their household. So it is no wonder then that the children become used to taking Allah's names, right? And this is one educational technique that I've tried when I was in Sydney, in the madrasa, is that if we can teach our young children the names of God and what they relate to, they become very connected to Allah. And this was the proof, this was the result, although I haven't seen it in many other madrasas. We tried an experiment where we took the children out and made them associate the names of God with nature or things in their life. So I'll just give you a simple example. This has happened in the classroom, actually. When we were teaching a spider, because in Sydney there are snakes and spiders. One of the brothers from Sydney, there you agree with me. But still it's a beautiful country, right? So don't worry. Just don't live in a huge house with a huge back garden, because 50% of the time maybe there could be a snake, right? Anyway, when we were teaching, a spider came into the classroom, right? So we were teaching this. And we told the children, say, Ya Wali. Ya Wali means, oh guardian, right? Oh my guardian, oh my protector. And now, those children, even if it's a few children, whenever they get scared, they say Ya Wali, right? It's very beautiful. They say Ya Wali. Whenever they see something beautiful, right, the sun, right, or a tree or a bird, they say Ya Jamil, oh beautiful, right? Now this is a small educational technique I'm sharing with you, but it is there within the Ahlul Bayt. Because in the letter to Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Imam Ali is openly saying to his son, take the name of Allah when you are in distress. Now, maybe as adults we may do that. But could you imagine if we teach this on a regular basis to our children, how connected they would be to the presence of Allah in every instant? And this is my humble argument, that the prophets and imams and their children were nurtured in a way to appreciate the presence of Allah and these principles. So then it is no wonder that Qasim gives this response, death is sweeter than honey. So I think we have not examined how the prophets and imams were brought up. We like to tell miraculous stories of prophets and imams in Wiladat. We like to share how they died. But how did they live? Salawat, please. And I want to end with just a few sort of examples of why prophets and imams also became very creative sort of intellectually. There is a verse in the Qur'an, surah number 39, verse 17 to 18, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, as for those who stay clear of the worship of the Taghoon, the rebellious people, and turn repentantly to Allah, there is good news for them. So give good news to my servants who listen to the word of Allah and follow the best sense of it. They are the ones who Allah has guided, and it is they who possess intellect. Okay? So Allah gives good news to the servants who listen, but then take the best sense of it. These are the ulil albab, those who possess intellect. And let me pose you now a question. People attend many majalis and many Muharram. But are we wiser by these majalises? Are we wiser by the stories we hear? The advice of the Qur'an is not just to listen, but to take the best sense of it. Now, you might disagree with me in my majalis. It's perfectly fine. Okay? You are to take the best sense of it. The best sense of what I am saying, the best sense of what the Qur'an is saying, to be critical and to apply it. And so when Imam Ali Islam was young, we always say that Muhammadun Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun Babuha. We say that Muhammad is the city of knowledge and Ali is its gate. And usually we will end there. We'll say, look, the Prophet is full of knowledge. I don't dispute that. And look, Ali's is great. And we will end the analysis there. We'll say, look at their maqam, we praise them, and we feel good. But again, a simple question I ask you, how did Imam Ali Islam become that Bab? Because it is reported that Imam Ali Islam used to follow the Prophet everywhere and ask questions. So when a verse was revealed, Imam Ali was there saying, why was this verse revealed? Oh Prophet, why did you behave in this way? Oh Prophet, why did you make this decision? So no wonder he became the gate to the city of knowledge, because he was the one that asked questions. Kumail ibn Ziyad did exactly the same thing. Dua al-Kumail, we are meant to recite every Thursday, right? How did that dua come to us? Because Imam Ali salam was there alone in Masjid al-Kufa. He was reflecting, he was praying, he was doing his own ibadah. But Kumail ibn Ziyad comes to Imam Ali Islam, and what does he say? Teach me something that can be beneficial for my life. So then Imam Ali teaches him this dua, known as Dua al-Khidr as well. So it is because Kumail ibn Ziyad asked that we have Dua al-Kumail. So the whole edifice, the whole foundation of the Islamic education is critical thinking, is questioning, is pondering, is not being satisfied with our surroundings and enhancing our environment, that it is something like of Bibi Fatima's environment and upbringing. So our majalis setting has to nurture this and not stop questions. This is how the ideal masjid should be, which I'm going to discuss in a few lectures. So therefore, just to give you these principles, Islamic education is simply about the expression of worship, the expression of critical thinking, and being open within the household and the community that the child feels the presence of Allah. Salawat. And I'm going to end on 2 lines only before the maqtal, okay? I found a conversation between Imam Ali al-Islam and Imam Hassan, which is in Tuhaful Uqul and Biharul Anwar. Now, I'm not saying that this is 100% authentic, okay? You won't find many Maulanas saying that, by the way. But I'm saying may not be 100% authentic, but it may give some idea, let us be at least respectful of what we have, it may give us some idea of how Imam Ali used to converse and test Imam Hassan about Islam. And I'll just give you 2 sort of lines from this. قِيلَ لَهُ مَا الزُّهْدُ. So Imam Ali says, what is asceticism or what is spirituality? So he's asking his son, what do you think spirituality or asceticism is? Asceticism is like, I don't want to be too technical. For example, being so spiritually disciplined and disciplined about your habits, in a way controlling your materialistic desires. That is what it means to be ascetic. You are totally detached from your material sort of desires. His response, قَالَ رَغْبَةُ فِي التَّقْوَى وَالزَّهَادَةِ فِي الدُّنْيَا. Says, desiring God consciousness and the presence of Allah and moderation in the world. Moderation in the world. So that doesn't mean living away from the world. That doesn't mean living in a cave. You cannot be spiritual by living in a cave. He says desiring God's presence and being sort of moderate in the world. Moderate, right? So in the way we dress, in the way we talk, as I said yesterday, in the way we relax, in the way we worship, everything in moderation, nothing in extreme, nothing in extreme. So Imam Hassan's response is very beautiful. Desiring the presence of Allah and being moderate in the world. And one final one. Imam Ali says, Ma as-sadadu. What is sort of appropriateness? What does it mean to be as an appropriate human being? So he says, Qala dafa'ul munkar bil ma'ruf. That means repelling munkar, that which is detestable and ugly and evil, with ma'ruf, goodness. That is what it means to be an appropriate person. So look at the insight and answers to Islam by Imam Hassan because of how he was tested and how he was raised. Can we dim the lights, please? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Today that we are talking about children and talking about the beloved children of Karbala. None can be more beloved than On and Muhammad, the 2 sons of Lady Zainab, peace be upon them, peace be upon her. And narrating the maqtal of children in Karbala is very difficult, and I cannot do it justice. The parents here, those of us that are still alive or remember when we were children, will naturally cry and feel upset when we see children hurt, when we see children injured, especially when we see children being killed. And it is still happening around the world. It is still happening in Africa. It is still happening in parts of Middle East. It is still happening everywhere. Children are trafficked. Children are abused. This is the reality of their life. Today that we are speaking about On and Muhammad were the light of Bibi Zainab's eyes. And it is reported on the day of Ashura that she dressed her children in the finest, in good clothes, in finery, in perfume. This is before sending them to defend Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But I ask you, my dear parents and brothers and sisters, when we dress our child, do we expect that we dress them for death? We dress them for school. We dress them for the majlis. We dress them for their birthdays. We do not expect that the beautiful dress of our daughter or the trousers and the shirt of our sons will come back in blood, will come back torn. That is not what goes through our mind. But imagine a mother dressing her children when she knows that their clothes will be ripped and torn and be full of blood. This is the strength of Lady Zainab. Lady Zainab asks her brother, "My brother, I give you my 2 children, young children, that they can defend you." Imam Hussein alayhi salam is reluctant and initially says, "No, how can I allow this? How can I say that 2 young people should go into the battlefield? Go and ask permission from your husband." Bibi Zainab says, "But I have asked permission, and this is my wish. You cannot deny me my wish, and you cannot deny the authority of their father." Imam Hussein sheds tears and says, "If this is what you wish, and if this is what the children understand through their reflection, then I can only allow it." On and Muhammad go into the battlefield. And as they are going into the battlefield, the enemies are surprised that the light of eyes of Bibi Zainab are in the battlefield. But they are merciless and they strike Muhammad. Muhammad falls to the ground and calls his brother as a brother would and says, "On, come to my aid. Come to my aid, my brother, I have been struck." Later, On also falls to the ground. And both of them are comforting each other and saying, "My brother, we soon will be with the Messenger of Allah, with our great-grandfather." They are both comforting each other. One is putting the other's head in his lap and stroking him and giving him comfort, for who is there to comfort them? Imam Hussein alayhi salam, seeing this, rushes to their aid, tries to pick them up, but he sees that their feet are dragging on the ground. He sees their armor split into pieces. He sees their shirt torn. As he comes back to the camp, Lady Zainab is not to be seen. She is inside her tent. Now tell me, which mother would behave like this, would have this resolute attitude? Everybody is crying except Zainab. For Zainab does not want to shed any tear, because should she shed the tears, everybody will lose hope. Everybody may leave Hussein alayhi salam. And she keeps her tears with her. Can a mother cry? Can a mother keep her tears for her children and withstand her tears? Tell me, do you and I know the bravery of Zainab salamullahi alayha? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Oh Allah, please have mercy on our children. Oh Allah, please elevate the stations of On and Muhammad. Oh Allah, please protect our children. And should you wish to take them, may it be in the best of circumstances, as the children of Karbala had the best of circumstances when they died. Oh Allah, please forgive us. Oh Allah, please help us raise our children well. Oh Allah, please help us be good parents. Oh Allah, please raise the stations of our parents and those who raised us, and our families and our marhumeen. And oh Allah, please help us fight oppression through the reappearance of our dear 12th Imam, Imam Muhammad Mahdi, Ajjallahu Faraja. Rabbana la taj'alna ma'a qawmi dhalimin. Surah Al-Fatiha. Matam al-Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.